Okie dokie. Who's typing?
Oh, sorry, that was me.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just curious.
Who's in charge
He's a
of this
fast
show?
typer.
Who's in charge of this show?
Who's executive
Ellie?
producing this? Ellie?
Well,
Yeah, Ellie's
Ellie.
sitting keeps.
Ellie is 100% in charge. She just looked back at me like, what are you
Cats are always in charge.
Yes, they are. Cats are very much in charge. There is a conspiracy theory out there that cats secretly run the world, and the more time I
It's not a
spend with
conspiracy.
them, the more I'm inclined to believe it. They are the aliens that we've been worried about all along.
That tracks.
Oh, plot twist. Yes.
She just looked at me like, you figured it out. Now I have to kill you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Please
man.
don't. Please don't. Just love me. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sidebar, where we have cats.
Yes.
Ashley's cat
Yes.
is mad at her, though, but
Yes.
for good reason. She had to go to the vet today, but it's a good thing that she went to the vet.
Yes. But she still doesn't like it. But
Well,
she can
no.
get over it. She'll be
Who would?
fine in a few days.
That's good.
There we
Keep
go.
us informed. All right, sweetheart, you got to move over here so Daddy can read. So tonight we're going to talk about deferred adjudication, specifically with cases that involve adults doing bad things to children. Let's just put it that way, because we need to get a few minutes in before we start using harder language. But it's something that we see. We see it in the courts that we watch. I don't think any of us are necessarily overly enthused about it, but it is something that happens. So I think it'll lead to a great discussion. But I thought I would start us off, as Bailey walks away yet again. I thought I would start us off with a little bit of a lay of the land as far as how different states handle deferred adjudications in general. Because, as is the case with most things in America, not all places handle it the same way. So, here's what I found. First off, there are 2 states that actually have no authority to defer adjudication in any cases at all. And that's Kansas and Wisconsin. Now, that's interesting because we watch judges in both of those states, but I'd never actually put together in my mind that deferred was not an option in those states, but it's not. So it's a power the judge does not have. Now, in contrast, there's 20 different states that have a broad eligibility, allowing the courts a very wide discretion over any offense that has probation as an option. So that's kind of the rule. If probation is an option, you can do a deferral. And just so we're clear, by the way, what a deferral means for those of you who might not know is the idea that basically you're serving out a probationary period, but if you successfully complete that, at the end of the thing, the case is dismissed. So it's not going on your record. Okay. Some quirks there. Texas law permits deferred adjudication for most offenses except for a few categories. Specifically DUI and drug offenses and felony sex crimes. Repeat felony sex crimes, however, not necessarily first-timers. And then Vermont, on the other end of things, has absolutely no limits whatsoever. It's completely up to the judge. There's about 13 states that have restricted eligibility when it comes to deferring something. Commonly, it's violent crimes or sexual offenses that are barred from deferment there. In Arkansas, there's a First Offender Act that excludes any sexual offense involving a minor. So there it is not an option. Wyoming is kind of lines up with Arkansas on that. Georgia has a First Offender Act, which disqualifies defendants charged with serious violent felonies, which does include things like aggravated crimes against children. We'll just word it that way. In Pennsylvania and Delaware, it is only available for misdemeanor level offenses, so not felonies. If you have a felony, you can't be deferred. So kind of a wide range of how things can happen. But in a lot of the courts that we watched, we've seen these type of cases get deferred. And I'll just start out by saying this: if it's clear that that an offense has taken place either through trial or the person has admitted. Well, if it's gone through trial, it's probably not going to be deferred. But in a plea, if it's clear that the person has admitted to it and taken responsibility for it, I have huge issues with that crime, with it being deferred, because it's one of those crimes where it seems like they just keep doing it. So I kind of feel like there has to be more punishment than, hey, do this probation, and then at the end, if you're a good boy, we'll go ahead and just dismiss it. That's kind of where I'm at. Feel free to disagree with me. Michael, what are your thoughts?
I don't really disagree, Dan. And again, to clarify, we're not just talking about your run-of-the-mill, I spanked my kid a little hard and left a welt and somebody called. And, we're talking about, at least for me, I look at this topic as more of the higher end, serious stuff that is done to children.
We're 6 minutes in. Use language now.
Yeah, I still kind of tiptoe around. It's just kind of my natural way of handling the YouTube, because we all have to talk like babies, even though we all know what we're talking about. It kind of sucks, but yeah, the people that do the bad stuff to kids, the sexual stuff. I am not a person that believes in deferment for that. I'm all for deferred adjudication on a lot of things. Look, everybody makes bad choices. Everybody does something wrong in their life, and I think we shouldn't always hold something like a petty theft or somebody that goes for a joyride when they're 17 in a car over someone's head for the rest of their life. Everybody should have a second chance for a lot of things, but this is not one of those kinds of things. And I just am not of that opinion that, I think most of the time people will reoffend in this kind of arena. We all know that, pedo stuff is the kind of stuff that has almost no rehabilitation. So I don't believe that deferred adjudication. And again, we're not even talking about, hey, I was 18 and with a 17-year-old, and we're not talking about that either. This is top end abuse kind of stuff, not statutory stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at.
An 18 with a 17, that's more like Romeo and Juliet laws in a lot of states.
Yes.
And as it should be, in my opinion, because that's not, that's just young people being young people. But it's interesting
right.
that you were talking about like the recidivism rate, and I'd mentioned it too. One of the things that I struggled with in some of the data dive that I did earlier today was there's not a lot of official studies out there and a lot of official numbers out there that prove the high recidivism that we all know really exists.
Yeah.
But you will find studies out there that will say it's really low, which is
I found
really bizarre.
15% for first-time perpetrators reoffending against their original victims and 12% reoffending against new victims, which is pretty low in my opinion.
Maybe on Mars, but here on planet Earth, I don't
know how they get that.
I don't know. Yeah, as like a researcher, like the pool of participants you would get, they would have to be individuals willing to admit they've reoffended. So I don't know if you're going to get a lot of people who are going to participate in a research thing that may be confidential or what have you. That is an odd stat. And so that doesn't surprise me that it would be incredibly low, because that's a hard study to do. I don't even know if I would believe those numbers, even if they were solid,
Yeah, I don't trust those numbers for a minute, because if you look at the predator catchers that are out there that do this, that intercept these people, they regularly run across repeat customers. One of them that I've actually got a little bit of a friendship with, he and I have talked. He had one person in Chicago that he caught 4 times. 4 times before he was finally imprisoned for a good long time.
Just like those people who get that second DUI. You think that's like the only second time they were drinking and driving?
Exactly.
Heck no.
No, it's the second time they got caught.
Now, the stats
Right.
that I do believe in would be if they had, I don't know if I can say this, like when they were younger, that happened to them. And so when they grew older, they thought that was okay. Those stats line up fine because 65.2% had a reoffending rate of those people, and 61.5% for that didn't have that happen to them type thing. So that's pretty high right there. But the other
Yes.
numbers doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, the data doesn't line up with what we see in real time. But then the other thing that doesn't line up is how many of these judges actually seem happy to just defer these situations. Or if they're not deferred, they're a slap on the wrist. But we've kind of talked about this before too, how many of these crimes against children are just not taken as seriously in our courts. And that is really, really disturbing to me.
I don't know if it's because that they're so used to seeing these kind of cases now that they don't think about. You know how you constantly see something over and over, you just become blind to it. I don't know if that's kind of the case here with the judges. I hope not, but that's something I've been thinking about.
Wow, with what you just said.
Yeah, I need a minute to wrap my brain around that.
Yeah, and
Like
it's
they're
not,
getting numb to it.
It's,
Yeah.
It's not against you. It's against the idea. Just wow, that what you're arguing is that it's become so prevalent. It's such a thing that it doesn't even register.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked on the other shows and the pre-show for sure about my belief that we're in a little bit of a spiritual war. If that is true, that statement that you just made, that just solidifies it for me, because that's demonic.
Yeah.
For lack of a better way to put it.
Based upon what we watch here on TCF, based upon the judges that we see, I don't know if I've seen that with those judges necessarily. Although we've seen some questionable decisions, that's for sure. Obviously, we go back to that Judge Stevens case. That being said, I hope that would be more of an isolated thing. But I guess it is kind of human nature that if you see the same thing over and over, no matter even the most shocking, horrific, awful thing, that I'm not necessarily saying you get used to it, but maybe you do become less shocked by it, you know, the 500th time that you've seen it. And certainly some of these judges that have been on the bench for 20, 30, 35 years, whatever, they are going to be, you know, they still may be disgusted by the behavior, but they're probably not as disgusted as the first time they saw it, which I suppose is a natural human response.
Correct.
And you know what? Just so long as they punish it the same way each time, you know, they give it the punishment that it deserves each time, I suppose, you know, the emotional side of it doesn't really matter. You know, it's more as long as it's still being done properly. But yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how someone comes before you as a judge and says, yeah, I did this. All right. Now we're going to put you on deferred adjudication. You know, you've admitted to your guilt. I'm not going to find you guilty. Instead, I'm going to put you on deferred. Don't screw up, or else, you know, you're looking at whatever, all this time hanging over your head.
And
I almost wonder if they're using that optimistically as like a carrot, like, hey, well, if you admit this and we get the conviction, as long as you straighten up and fly right, it'll go away. So I wonder if it's that carrot to, like, A, get them to confess, and B, get them to admit what they did. that it was wrong, and that if they don't do it again, then it goes away and it's not hanging over them. Now we know about reoffending and kind of maybe the beliefs of these people that would carry out these acts, but that's the only thing I could see that these judges are doing this, or these prosecutors are even offering this as an option, is like, if this is what I have to do to get you at least to admit what you did, okay. But am I okay with it? No. But I can see maybe where they're coming from.
Yeah, Lindsay. I think most of the deferred adjudication happens with first-time offenders.
Right.
So it makes sense, because if that person reoffends again, why would you give them that option?
Right.
But at the same time, I don't entirely agree with that either. Because the chance of them reoffending would be so high, and it puts the public in danger too. So I don't agree with that. So,
100%.
Yeah.
Would it help our discussion to have a couple of notable examples of where this has happened? So I've got 3, and they're all from Texas. Somebody please tell me what in the world goes on with Texas sometimes. So the first one was from 2014, and this is somebody that a lot of people will know, and that is former NFL running back Adrian Peterson.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah.
He actually played here in Arizona for a year.
Played here in Minnesota for a long time.
Yes, he did. So AP was indicted for felony reckless injury to a child after he used a wooden switch to discipline his 4-year-old son, causing bruises and lacerations. He pled it down to a misdemeanor, was given 2 years deferred adjudication, a $4,000 fine, and community service.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big controversy too. I remember when that happened.
Yeah, he lost some time in the league over that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whipping your. Oh, yeah, that's the whipping your child thing, though. Yeah,
I remember that being controversial because they were talking like cultural things. They were talking like Southern culture, other culture aspects. Like, should he really be punished if that's how he was raised? And
what really got people though was the fact that it wasn't just bruises; it was lacerations.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I can see that.
It's like quasi caning right there.
Right.
So also from Texas 2022, Marca Bodine. This is in the Houston area. Marca Bodine, 32-year-old former middle school teacher, pled guilty to continuously sexually abusing a 13-year-old student over several years. Despite the serious nature of the crime, the judge sentenced Bodine to 60 days in jail and a 10-year deferment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And then another one.
Well, that's a whole nother.
Yeah, that's
that's a whole nother topic about teachers.
That's a problem.
Yes, it is.
That's probably another sidebar, the whole teacher thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to go down that
Michelle and I were
rabbit hole.
talking about this very topic earlier today when kind of discussing this show. Yeah. Oof.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then the last one I have is an example. Well, actually, I have another one, too. I have a 3B, but this is 3. Thomas Bowden case. Again, Texas. 29-year-old man in San Angelo who was accused of brutal sexual assault of his girlfriend's 2-year-old daughter.
Ooh.
Took a plea.
Oh my
Bowden
God.
received a 10-year deferred adjudication and a small fine. Not required to register as a sex offender.
Oh,
that.
yeah,
No.
don't agree
Nope.
at all.
And currently
That's-
going on in Utah, the case of Ruby Frankie, the YouTube mom accused of
Yes.
extreme abuse of her child.
Right.
That one has problems because under the current Utah law, even some forms of quote-unquote torture don't guarantee prison time for a first offense, so they're scrambling to change their laws. But that's just 3 examples of the level of barbarity, for lack of a better way to put it. We can debate the AP thing, but examples 2 and 3 are pretty heinous,
Yeah.
and they're deferred.
Yeah. Yeah, those are awful. I mean, even the Adrian Peterson thing was pretty bad. I mean, that was, and again, look, I think, well, especially if you're kind of in the Gen X and older crowd. I mean, you remember your parents, even if they didn't actually do this, they'd threaten to hit you with the belt. They'd get the, don't make me get the belt.
Yeah.
Our
And
teachers had paddles.
Even millennials.
Yeah.
I remember that. So
The
yeah.
wooden spoon.
Yes.
Yeah. Because we've talked about that here before. That I know in schools, obviously, the corporal punishment was a thing in many states until the 70s. In some cases, the early 80s. And of course, parents would have a belt. I remember having friends that said whose parents said, I'll break out the switch," and I didn't even know what that was until it was explained to me. And that sounds horrific. I mean, even that level, not to minimize it, but that level of child abuse, which is much smaller, much lower on the hierarchy than, some of these other crimes we're talking about. That's bad. And look, times have changed. You can't do that. You can't whip your children with belts anymore, even though people still do. And they still seem to get away with it. And, leaving marks and big old welts on your kids and bruises and those kinds of things is wrong. And I don't think people should, even for things like that, which, again, smaller time stuff, I don't know if I'm comfortable with deferments even for that.
Right.
Maybe. I mean, I guess to a point, there are some people that maybe that is how they were raised. Look,
Right.
you use the belt. My parents would threaten it. I never actually got the belt, but it was one of those things where, it was more of a threat. And that's one thing, because that's not actually abuse. It's like, hey, scaring your kids. I don't know. That's not really, I don't consider that abuse, but actually doing it, maybe some people today still think that's acceptable. We watched a case in Judge Stevens' court the other day about kind of something like this. And he said, look, times have changed. He goes, I remember a time when that was okay, but it's not anymore. And you can't be doing that. And,
Yeah, it was a lady that
yes,
whipped her kid. Yeah.
yes,
I remember
that's
that.
right. Yeah. So that,
autistic kid.
that's right. That's right.
Right.
It was. It wasn't just, it wasn't.
Yeah, that was a little
special.
Yeah. I think
Yes.
I know it can get frustrating raising autistic children sometimes, just because, but they don't fully understand. So I don't agree with the aggressive stance with autistic kids, but I understand that people lose their temper with them at times. So.
Well, and there's a big difference in types of corporal punishment, right? Yeah. If you see your child is about to put their hand on the hot stove and you slap their hand away from doing that, I don't think anyone's going to sit there and say you're the worst parent in the world for doing that, right? Mm-hmm. It's just like a reactionary thing. Hey, don't touch that. Now, sometimes, the old saying, if they do it once, they probably won't do it again if you just let them do it. But I mean, just as an instinctive reaction, you're not going to let your child do that, right? But I think there's a big difference between that and using a belt or an instrument, or even like hitting your child so hard that you leave a mark, not just a mark, but a bruise. I think there's a big difference in those things. Now I'm kind of anti-corporal punishment, but I think and I get it. I get when you have an autistic child, and sometimes there's restraining that may have to occur, or, you have a child with severe behavioral issues and you may have to restrain. But again, there's a big difference between that and abuse, right? So, it's a delicate line, but there's obviously, that's why judges have discretion, right? But when we start getting up into these higher end abuse cases and sexual stuff, I mean, that's where the line absolutely has to be drawn, and you can't just say, okay, we're going to give you another chance. Come on.
Yeah, a line should be drawn, but they're not drawing it. Bailey, you've been quiet.
Loving the discussion. I did some digging into Texas. So, probation is called community supervision in Texas, and there's two types. There's deferred, we've discussed that, and then regular community supervision. We all know what the typical kind of terms are for these kinds of community supervisions. Don't do drugs, don't pick up any cases, um, etc. What I found out was in Texas, for the misdemeanor, if someone is placed on deferred, which, as we discussed, does remove it from their kind of rap sheet, but I'm going to come to that because it really doesn't. A judge can sentence them to 30 days on top of, them being released on deferred after that. And for a felony, it can be up to 180 days in jail. So we were talking about these cases. It's like, why not at least throw the kid in jail for a little bit of friggin' time? You have the leeway. The legislature wrote that in there as a provision for a deferred adjudication. And as Dan was stating in the beginning of the show, there's not many states that really have this, and so this is a privilege, and so it's a very unique system, and it does work. I don't know why the judge. You're going to have to interview the judge why he made the decision of. I don't know. For these types of cases, are you kidding me? But I'm not going to bury the lead. I'm okay with deferred adjudication in that one particular case where it was involving the photos and the media. My only exception to that type of abuse is if there was physical contact. If you physically abuse a child, then nope, you need to be locked up. There is absolutely no room for that type of provision. And I found out this deferred thing came up later. It wasn't like written in the books from the founders. This was like a new thing that came up relatively recent. This whole probation idea, or releasing people, pre-sentencing and all that stuff. For that type of crime, and you've been found guilty, and it's your sentencing, no.
Bailey, so what you're saying is, though, because I got to circle back, because you're saying you're okay with deferred for someone that just has images and media, like, child stuff, like
the way you
images
put
and
it, yes, but yes, to answer your question, I don't say just or only images. It's absolutely egregious, but I think the judge had to weigh a bunch of things, which for this particular defendant was a very, very young defendant. And by the way, how are these young people able to find this stuff? Like, is it really that easy to find this material?
Yep.
And that is
It must be.
You just have to know where to
finding
look.
a gun in Maryvale. Give me 5 minutes.
Where's the supervision? Where's the parents? Where's all this
5.
stuff? So I'm having to weigh all of these things, and this kid, yes, he knows that is bad behavior. If we're talking about the same case that I think we're on the same page of, he knew what he was doing was wrong because he was hiding it, and he admitted that he was hiding it, and he even said, I think he had feelings for his brother, but he didn't act on it. I think that's a very unique crime for a defendant at a very unique age, and all those factors need to be weighed. And so for me, I'm going to give that little somebody who I know is probably never, you cannot uninstall that from your brain, that type of fetish, that type of thing, right? But what the court is doing with their discretion is to say, we're going to give you a chance.
We're going to give you 8 years deferred. We're going to put a ton of restrictions on you. I mean, you're probably just not going to be successful on this.
Probably
But if
no
you,
internet's one of them. Yeah.
exactly, and then there was the judge, if I'm not mistaken, in that same hearing, had to kind of walk back a little bit the internet thing, because how's he going to get a job, Your Honor?
Yeah.
How's he going? And they had to make all these friggin' provisions for him on his deferred to make this easier for him. Then they give them therapy. And all
we're
this
talking
stuff.
about, you're talking about the case in, that's Judge Collada. Was that?
Yeah,
who
the
it
one
was?
in
Yes.
Ohio.
It was
Yeah.
like,
I thought we were still talking about that Judge Stevens
I don't
one.
know. Maybe they're all bleeding in together, sadly, because I've noticed the same thing, Mike. We're like, we started TCF on Monday, and it was like, boom, we're already getting one already.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it seems like every freaking week we're getting almost every day.
I have to
Every
tell
day.
you, I will tell you this, Bailey. I am definitely not desensitized to it. It disgusts me just as much
It does.
seeing it. Like because I was just coming out of the shower and getting dressed and stuff, and that case comes on, and I come in here and I sat down. I put my my headphones back on. I start just typing in the chat like, what the actual hell is going on here? Like, I was just as upset by that as I am anytime I hear this. Some of the cases, look, theft cases, I don't get that worked up about, because theft is so common, and it's just one of those things that it's just there, right? It is what it is. I mean, yeah, it sucks, but it is what it is. But to me, this has a victim that is actually being, directly harmed. Not just a business that's having, merchandise taken from them, or not just someone having money taken from them, but actual violation of their person, and will require a lifetime probably of counseling and therapy, that sort of thing. I don't think I've been desensitized to it. I hope no one else here has. I mean,
I haven't.
But you are right, Bailey. These cases run together because we're hearing them so often, and the stat about 1 in 4 women having been abused at some point in their life, sexually abused at some point in their life, and usually as a child, is a dark stat that I used to find hard to believe, and now I kind of think it might actually be low.
Even if it was halfway wrong, my goodness.
Well, yeah.
Jesus, so it's.
And
to-
yeah, oof.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we see this so often, and to think that, and I'm sorry, Bailey, but I just, you even said it, like, this is a fetish that can't be removed from the brain. I guess I don't really see why we would even bother with deferred, because we know based on statistics and based upon anybody that, has any background in psychology or has talked to or looked at any of the reports on this kind of thing, we know that person is going to eventually go back to it. You're basically just giving them a free chance to do it before you finally put the hammer down on them, rather than just put the hammer down on them.
I really thought about this long. Like, if we really believe, because I do believe these individuals are, I don't want to I don't want to speak irresponsibly, but yes, I do generally believe these individuals, you can't get rid of this, right? But I want to believe that with therapy, and they avoid the internet, and because it's an addiction. It's no different than alcohol or heroin. I think these individuals can kind of mitigate and avoid certain behaviors. I know, but putting that aside, if we are going to call these individuals irredeemable, I mean, then, so to speak, then what do? Do we just lock these people up and throw away the key? No.
Is there anything
Yeah.
going on Epstein's old island at the moment?
I don't know,
Can we
but
put them there?
all I know.
Sounds like they might have been there to begin with.
All I
Yeah,
know is
here's my concern with all of this is why are we taking chances with our most vulnerable? Hi,
Right.
Freya. Why? It
No, I agree.
it does not make any sense to me at all.
Yeah.
You know, I like Michael was saying with like theft or things like that. Yeah, stuff happens. People make bad decisions. As Judge Stevens likes to say, fix it. This is fixable.
Right. Yes, exactly.
But
Yeah.
that it's not fixable. It's
Yeah,
not.
it isn't.
And
I
I
mean-
get Bailey what you're saying about the feels and the hopes and the beliefs and all that maybe there's a chance for these people. There's just not. I mean, not.
No.
And I was only half kidding when I
Only-
said, "What are
only
they
a
doing with
rare
Epstein's old
circumstances.
island right now?"
yeah.
I
There's always
guess it's not-
there's always that one off, and I
Yes.
think medication and stuff helps as well. Just to put that in there, there's some medication to help with arousal and stuff like that.
Right.
But it's not a foolproof.
But it's
Yeah.
for these people, it's not just about that. It's not just about a gratification. There's anybody that commits these crimes, rape and all that stuff, even against other adults. It's not just about the gratification part. It's about the power part. It's about the control. There's a psychology behind it. There's a rush behind it. It's not. You can give them all of the suppressants, the chemical castration. They're still probably going to do it. It's just it'll be done in a different way. And again, this isn't about like somebody that just whacks their kid, like an Adrian Peterson. That kind of behavior can be rehabilitated. That kind of behavior, sometimes it just requires education and saying, "Hey, listen, man, I get what you went through, but these are the times now." But somebody that has images, images, and I say even images because it's not a physical violation of another person. It is the exploitation of another person, which doesn't make it better. But even that is still a fetish, as Bailey called it, and that is near impossible to rehabilitate. And then the actual physical act is, again, based on everything I've ever read about it,
Yeah.
is impossible to rehabilitate. And Bailey's like, well, do we just throw away the key? Yeah, we do. That's what you do with those people. That's what you do.
I definitely don't agree. I think those people at least should carry out their full sentence. I don't think we should be giving them deferred adjudication for sure. So
Well,
And
yeah,
the
Even
crazy
regular probation, I'm kind of against even traditional probation where they get the conviction and they still have to do the the Chapter 62 in Texas or whatever it's
Right.
called in the other states. Registration. I don't think. And look, somebody might. Once again, this isn't the. I know because there's the people that will say, yeah, but what about the 18, 17-year-old or the and I've seen I have seen where people have to register for that. But again, to me, this is not about the edge case, the fringe, the kind of gray area. This is the
like
somebody violated a literal child or a
single-digit child, right.
or even a vulnerable person, an adult that maybe is confined to a wheelchair, or we can expand this out and even say the vulnerable people, the disabled people, because again, we see that on TCF on a fairly regular basis as well.
Yes.
Elderly people, vulnerable among us, so I don't think that kind of abuse has a rehabilitative. That's what deferred adjudication really is all about. It's, hey, you messed up. Here's your opportunity to turn it around and not get a conviction. And it's sort of a reset. and a mulligan, if you will. You stole some property. You stole this, or you punched somebody in the face at a bar. Listen, man, we all screw up. Here's your opportunity to rehabilitate. Almost any crime can be rehabilitated. Even murder, I think, can be rehabilitated. Not that. Not that.
It can be rehabilitated to the point where you can recognize it is wrong. You're still murderer.
No. I'm not saying it. You can undo it. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
I kind of saw the ripple go through the faces and hold on, I think I know what he's saying.
It can be. It's not a thing where some people do fetishize murder, and some people are serial killers and do it. But what I'm saying is there's a big difference. Yeah, there's a big difference between somebody that commits a heat of the moment crime like that versus somebody that actively seeks out child stuff and continues to do that. I mean, there's a huge difference, I think, among that. And that's why, we've seen deferred for people that have committed manslaughter. Maybe that's another topic for another day.
Yeah.
But there's, I don't know if I'm in favor of that either, by the way. I pretty much am not, but I could at least make a case for that. I cannot make a case for this.
No, I totally agree with you, Michael.
I don't see why someone would get...
There's no good justification. Sorry, Ashley, go.
No, you're good. You're good. I was going to say the same thing, because why would you give someone that has this issue deferred adjudication without any prison time? Does not make sense to me, because the longer they're away from their addiction or their fetish per se, the more successful their chance is at possibly being successful in the long run, So that's why my mind's like, why is it being deferred? Because you're just putting them back out where this material is. So that's my thought.
I still maintain that it is a technique to avoid a trial and to get the confession. That's where I think their heads are at. I think it's a method of getting them to admit it, at least on the first offense. Again, not saying I agree with it, but I'm seeing it as a technique like, hey, if we don't offer this plea, we're going to have to do this long drawn out trial. We are going to re-traumatize this kid.
Right.
Re-traumatize this family. If we offer this and he knows he has a chance. Sorry, I don't mean to say that all people that do this are hymns, but let's just hypothetical case. He has this chance at, redemption, as it were. Let's try it.
Yeah,
I don't agree, but I can see why judges are willing to take that route.
Okay, let's play that out for a minute then, if we could. So we have this. What you're saying is they make this deal. And what you said, at least in part, was the idea of avoiding traumatizing the child.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally get it. Thank you for the $1, Barbara. Okay. However, at what cost?
No, I don't disagree.
The child is already traumatized. What's done is done. Yeah. And unfortunately, that child will have to march through whatever happened for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. However, you can't then say, well, we don't want to traumatize this child, so we're going to put the rest of society at risk. Now, that's not me poo-pooing what you're saying. It's me more saying that if that's the choices that they're making, that's messed up.
I do not disagree.
Totally messed up, because I'm sorry, but the kid's already traumatized. If you got to put him on the stand.
Yeah.
Or they refuse to...
Sorry, but it is what it is.
These are incredibly complicated cases
right.
that require a lot of investigation from the police department to the district attorney's office, speaking with these young victims that we will only ever know their name by their initials. These are very sensitive cases. And so a DA, by the way, to take a deferred, both the state and the defense have to give up their right to a jury trial. Both have to agree before they could even accept this, because a jury by law is not allowed to give a deferred adjudication sentencing. They just cannot do that.
Yep.
Only
They
a
can only
judge can
give
do
probation
that. Right.
or a prison sentence.
So here's this. Everybody waives everything. So to me, I think they see a lot more things in front of them, and they see a lot more nuance and information that we just don't know right now.
Yeah.
And for us, we're kind of maybe seeing it kind of like, wait a minute, why would like what you were saying? Do we really want to bring up this person who we need to turn all the cameras off, only audio, and we cannot use the victim's name, and they have to recount this violence? Do we really want to go through that? And
If it's a choice between that and a deferred, yes.
But here is a defendant who is making his right to be like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to take and own up to this, and if that means that I kind of keep my freedom, I didn't make up the rules. I don't, but I would take that deal and then try to mind my P's and Q's. And are you redeemable? I don't know. But I do know this. The state is going to be up. Here's the part that pissed me off. These people who get on deferred, in these cases just like this, 1/3 to 2 years, whichever is less, if they're on good behavior, you're off. Deferred is completed. 1/3 of your probation. So let's say
If you complete all the things you're supposed to do.
Right.
That's right.
If you're 1/3 or 2 years, whichever is least. This is the state of Texas. I am shocked the state of Texas does this.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't.
So if you're on like a 9-year
Texas is
deferred,
weird.
Texas is weird because they have, you think, the criminals, the crimes are tougher in Texas. Yeah. And in some ways they definitely are.
Yeah.
But in other ways, they absolutely aren't. I mean, if you have 4.1 grams of meth in Texas, you are looking at 2 to 20 years. Mm-hmm. If you've got images of children doing stuff on your computer, well, you could certainly get deferred.
Yeah, the judge will take you to the Cracker Barrel afterwards for dinner.
And what did you say? And what did you say, Jan, that Georgia did? It was something about, what was that again?
So let me go back to Georgia here real quick.
Because I don't even know.
So Georgia has the First Offender Act, which disqualifies defendants charged with serious violent felonies, and that would include child molestation or rape. It bars them from being allowed to have a deferred adjudication.
Oh, so not having probation. Okay, gotcha.
Okay, so in Texas, but maybe this is what you're talking about. So in Texas, if you do a deferred, by the way, it's not really totally expunged off your record. It never happened, like it never even happened. It's not true. If a lawyer in Texas is telling you that, they're lying to you. It is there. And after 5 years, if it's like a felony conviction, I think it's 5 years, you have to wait. You can then apply for, by the way, this is 5 years after you get released off of your deferred. You can request that there be a non-disclosure, that the state doesn't release this out to anybody. But the thing is, any employer worth their salt can still find that you have had a conviction, but the conviction will read out as deferred. Now, for the hiring manager who either may know what a deferred is and just doesn't give a shit, they're like, I don't care.
Right.
Or they don't know the difference between a deferred at all, and they just see that you have something. And by the way, this is apartment complexes, this is buying a used car, this is getting a new job, all of this. So these people getting deferred on these serious charges, and we already mentioned, they're also going to have mandatory reporting for the rest of their lives. Even after this deferred, there are always going to be these predators that we've all agreed. We don't want these kind of people. We want to monitor them. And even though he's on a deferred, the state of Texas says those types of crimes that we've been talking about, all of them, just fill in the blank, those you do not get a non-disclosure for. You do not have, the legislature has said you do not get a non-disclosure for that. So those will always be reported. So if you're a stalker, if you're somebody who is beating up your girlfriend, all that stuff, even if you were successful on deferred, you get off of deferred. We've all then agreed on a second layer of protection that you do not get to totally
Expunge.
scrub this from your record. It's it's like if a girlfriend wants to like look up, hey, is this guy a freaking weirdo? You should be able to look up that information.
Actually, I believe how it is that it is expunged from like the public record.
Yeah.
It is still, yeah, it's still, in the court system, it can still be looked up there. But in terms of the public, yes, it is. That's the advantage of a deferred.
Bailey, I have to correct you on something.
Go ahead, please.
You had said that in Texas, sure it's deferred, but they'd still have to register.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah, they don't.
I thought
Thomas Bowden case, that was the third example that I brought up. Specifically, he was not required to register as a sex offender.
that's a unique case then, because the other ones, all the other ones I've seen, they were like, you have to register.
Yeah, this was part of his deal.
I don't know.
But again, this was the
that is
guy who
about.
sexually assaulted his girlfriend's 2-year-old daughter.
Oh.
And he
What-
got a
what is
10-year
up with
deferred,
Texas?
no requirement to register. I don't know what's up with Texas. They make no sense to me.
Yeah.
They fry 10 people a week,
Right.
Right.
whatever, yeehaw. But it was only until like a year or two ago that you could legally concealed carry in the state without
Right.
having an excessive amount of permits. So there's this image of Texas, and then there's the reality of Texas.
Right.
And they don't really match.
I lived there for 8
Right.
months. It's a great state, but man, I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Arizona is far tougher on a lot of these kinds of crimes. Well, some of them anyway.
Yeah.
Every state has their oddities, but Texas is weird because we all think
I would
here
say
we are,
Texas and Florida are weird.
well, Florida is
Florida
side.
has
We could
its own
have
flavor.
Sidebar Florida and never run out of
Yeah.
never run
Too many
out of
show
topics.
ideas. Slow it down a little bit.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, that's the crazy part about Texas. Like I said, it's one of those states where drug offenses are up here, are pretty much the highest that you've got. Drug and murder are right up here.
Yeah.
And everything else kind of falls into various categories below. It's very strange. Whereas Arizona, just to give you a comparison, our laws if you have a gun we have very, very, very loose, very, I would say very unrestricted laws when it comes to firearms here. You don't have to have a permit to conceal carry. You can pretty much just buy a gun and you could buy 50 guns all at once. You could do whatever you
We don't have
want.
to register our firearms here.
Nope.
But you commit a crime that's involving a firearm, it's an automatic sentence enhancement here, pretty much no matter what. So, we're like, hey, you can have your guns. Don't you dare commit a crime with one because it's going to tack on big time.
That makes sense.
Whereas other states don't necessarily have the same kind of automatic enhancements that we have. I mean, yeah, they have the deadly weapon and all that, but
Yeah.
even if it's like in your car and you go and burglarize a house, even if it's in your car, you can still be charged. So that's kind of the difference. And so what I'm saying is, for these kinds of cases, it's just weird that of all places, man, some of these southern states, I don't know what it is. I can't tell you what it is. I wish we'd catch up with the psychology on this. I wish we'd, go after these cases a little bit differently.
Yeah, and the
I could
social
speculate
studies
as to what it is, but I'm not going to do it on this live show. And
Me too. That's, I know where you're going, Dan, and I was going to say it, and then I sort of edited myself there, which is unusual for me, but yeah.
Weird.
I think even Georgia they were you did have to have a permit to conceal carry, but now you don't have to have that. But I'm not sure if there's any consequences if you do commit a crime with a firearm. I highly doubt there is, but yeah.
But isn't that the crazy part? Like we know the crimes and the way they work involving firearms.
Yeah.
We understand, you know, a lot of these other laws, but when it comes to child, you know, Dan said this earlier, and it kind of keeps echoing in my head. Like, yeah, we really aren't protecting our children the way we say we should. You know, Arizona, we talk tough, and we have these organizations, you know, DCS in Arizona, Department of Child Safety, you know, CPS in other states, or DCF, or whatever it's called in the state where you are. And, you know, these organizations are supposedly there to protect children. They're supposedly there to do, but what they really are is a big waste of time in a lot of sense, because abuse is pretty rampant. And where are these people? They're too busy investigating, you know, low-hanging fruit, apparently. People that, you know, you see them go after cases like, my kid was sick for a few days. You're a bad parent. We're taking your kids away because you didn't take them to school for a couple of days because they had a fever.
And there are groups too that they're actively encouraged not to speak to anyone of a certain level of authority because they don't want CPS to get clued into what's happening inside some of these organizations and affiliations. And I'm trying really hard not to use a certain word. Yeah, so there's a lot of that at play too. And in some jurisdictions, some organizations have a little bit more pull on the legal system. So that might be also where we see some of the lighter sentencing coming from as well. I'm looking at an article about, and I realize how late we are on the show to drop a big bomb on things, but I'm looking at the article about the...
We can always have overtime.
It happens that way sometimes.
I don't know how many of you followed what happened with the Duggar family, specifically the eldest Duggar child.
Yes, I think he got something like 20 years.
Yeah, so for anyone that might not be familiar, the 19 kids and counting family of the mid-2000s, the eldest son, Josh Duggar, was convicted in 2022 of possession of CSAM, child stuff, and was sentenced to 12 and a half years in prison. He has 20 years of supervised release and has to register the rest of his life. But leading up to this, there were several incidents in his life that kind of showed he had a predisposition to this. And his family kind of poo-pooed it aside and was buddy-buddy with the police organization in town, so it didn't get tried. And then the Ashley Madison scandal broke when he was older and married, and a lot of the community still stood behind him because the community didn't really believe he was doing anything wrong and that he was a good guy. And then this developed.
Family values and all that.
Yeah. So like there certainly is a culture in some organizations, and I'm by no means throwing people of belief under the bus. This is obviously a horrific circumstance here, and definitely the exception to the rule. But there are cultures within certain groups in this country, in certain areas of this country, where they're not encouraged to even speak to anyone in power. And if it does even get to the point where it's discovered, the family kind of closes rank and things don't really develop. And that might even be where some of this comes from. Like, you know, we have to give them something, so let's do this, and then it goes away, and we've prayed it away, and everything's great again.
Yes.
Sorry, that was a huge bomb to drop in the last 5 minutes of the show.
It makes sense.
It's fine.
I'm sure it happens
more
more
trying
than
to figure
we
out how I wanted to
think it
say,
does.
and not.
It's a real world example. It's a real world example of something that goes on. Again, you know, when we were doing this, my prep for the show, I talked to Michelle about this because she's a big, you know, advocate. She has her whole website, sweetchildaz, by the way, .com.org, where,
Facebook
you know,
page of the same name.
And the same Facebook page of the same name, Sweet Child Arizona.
Thank you, Michelle, for all you do. It's wonderful.
No, and you know, there's probably even the banner. There it is.
There it is.
but you know, Well, it is, except for the fact that, I wouldn't even know about half of this stuff that goes on were it not for her and her advocacy for all this stuff. Because, this kind of abuse and this kind of incompetence kind of in the state levels and and even in the court system to properly handle this. I knew there was, problems, but I had no idea until kind of confronting this head on what's going on. And it's insane. And so again, probably a whole other topic for a whole other day, but we have to really, as a society, reevaluate how all of this is done. And we have to catch up to the social science, so to speak, about these offenders. And we really have to start cracking down on the stuff that really needs to be cracked down on, I'll tell you, just in this state alone, remember the YouTube mom, the mom that had the kids that had that channel, Fantastic Adventures. This was here in Arizona. She lived in Maricopa.
I remember.
And what was her name? Oh my God, Michelle something. But she had abused the hell out of these kids, right? Now, luckily, she wasn't facing deferred, but for what she did, now she died. She's dead because she had some health issues and whatever.
Yeah.
But so, the trash sort of took itself out. But it's one of those things where it's amazing that we don't punish this the same way we do some other offenses. And I'm still blown away by it. When it's not just even about a deferred versus non-deferred. I guess we've sort of kind of strayed off into just the punishment in general, but
yeah.
Right.
And I should mention the
Michael.
Duggar case, that was federal court. So we were kind of escaping the Arkansas of it all. And that was flagged federally, but yeah.
On the screen now is who you were talking about, Michael. This is Michelle Habson.
yes,
Hobson.
Hobson. Yep.
Accused of 30 counts of kidnapping and child abuse.
And by the way, just to throw our state organization DCS under the bus further, I'm sure right now Michelle, if she's watching this downstairs, is grinning ear to ear because she knows this is. They dropped the ball. They investigated several times and came back, I think 9 or 10 times, and came back unsubstantiated against, and they supposedly investigated. So, when we see the deferred adjudications, and it's not surprising because the organizations that we have in our state and in other states too, just are insufficient for various reasons. Either they're understaffed, underfunded, they hire people that are incompetent, whatever the case, maybe a little from column A, B, and C. That's why when we get to the court system, judges are probably not armed with all the information they need, perhaps, or even if they are, then the prosecutor, maybe it's just, it all just comes down to nobody has all the information that they properly need to go ahead and do this. Whereas I don't know if you really need all the information. You see someone that does something like she did. I mean, wow. That's a lot of child abuse that was going on there. A lot of exploitation. She made, that channel had millions of subscribers. They made bank. She made bank off of her exploitation and abuse. And, if you read into what was going on there, there's pepper spray in bad areas. There's electric shock. There's putting them in closets and starving them. It was wild.
I feel like a lot of those, there's more than those that we just mentioned. I know there's a lot of things on YouTube that they're taking advantage because of profit and not, they're not
Ruby
doing
Frankie,
what they're
who
supposed
Dan
to
brought
do.
up, did the same thing.
Yeah.
That was the same kind of situation. She had this 8 passengers was her channel or whatever. Yeah. And she completely did the exact same thing. Almost down to the letter. It was like, there's like a template these people follow. It's gross. And the fact that I think, she's only facing as little as 4 years and up to 30 or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's what she got.
The Utah.
And that 4 years, come on, man, come on. What are we doing? And I know, I'm sorry that I think I sort of had a part in taking this in a different direction, but
No, it's fine.
but this, I think, just like with a lot of stuff we talk about here on Sidebar, it's hard to limit it to just the courts because the courts are just part of the equation.
Yeah, probably.
They have to have all the information. And when the state fails, the courts are probably going to fail. So that's the problem I think that we have here.
Yeah. That's probably a good place to leave it for tonight. We have a problem.
Yes.
That's probably a good place to leave it.
Solution, do better.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, what I would say is just this. It was kind of a messed up kind of analogy or fact or whatever. It was like we're getting more and more of these cases, but it also reminded me, well, Bailey, that means a lot of DAs are prosecuting these cases, and they may not be doing it in the way that we would prefer, that maybe we don't agree with the legislature of this particular state and how they do this and the flexibility that they give these judges. And I'm glad we can have this really soupy, nuanced conversation about this stuff. But I'm glad these people are being prosecuted and they're doing it in the plea way. Like we said, we're not trying to drag people up to the witness stand, et cetera. So that's all I wanted to add to my little bit there at the end. Thank you so
Bailey,
much.
I would have to say if they're prosecuting them more, it means there's more in front of them.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's behind. Every department out there has a budget. This is a sidebar to a sidebar.
Yeah.
We'll save that for another time. But yes, everybody is backed up. So we're going to see these issues, and Michael was kind of touching on this. He would love to see the social issue science start of ideas of like, why are we kind of having this? Like, what's going on here? Let's kind of dig up the pieces and figure out, try to understand this a little bit better. And I love that we get to do that on Sidebar and debate on these ideas, and we don't actually have to freaking solve anything. Like, there's no final at the end of the show, so it's it's just participation points.
Participation.
Isn't it? It's
All
like,
right.
hey, show up to class and bring some good notes.
Yeah, it's just the Bailey wording.
Lindsay, final thoughts?
We don't have to solve it, but I think we had some great conversation tonight. Don't hurt your kids. I think that's what it comes down to. Just don't do it in the first place, and then we wouldn't have this. We wouldn't
Don't
be
do
having this
bad
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ashley, your thoughts?
As a society, I think we need to hold each other accountable. In terms of starting with as we've talked about before, it starts with the family. I think the family needs to be right for these problems to eventually go away. But unfortunately, people are not good parents. People have long-lasting, traumatizing effects to their kids. And the kids, I'm talking here, and the kids loved one. and the
Speaking of the kids,
kids loved one. Like, just know that whatever actions you just parent better, and parent more effectively, and that way society doesn't have to parent for you per se. And then it goes down to the government. So, yeah, it's just a trickle-down effect, unfortunately. And, yeah, that's what I wanted to add. And Sabrina says hi.
hi, Sabrina.
Oh, hi, Sabrina.
Mikey.
Society needs to do better. I mean, that's really the bottom line. We do. We all of us have to collectively do better, whether that's putting in people into power that will actually take the initiative to improve the system, and holding the judges accountable that are willing to, give deferred adjudication to people that should not be getting deferred adjudication. It all comes back to us.
I agree. Along those lines, I talk all the time, and it's Bailey's favorite earworm now. Do the next right thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here in Arizona, Mrs. TCF and I recently got our ballots to go vote on some stuff. So the next right thing would probably be to do our homework and vote, because to your point, Michael, it all comes down to us, and part of doing the next right thing is probably having more control over and more input over who's actually in these positions to make these decisions. Because often they're bad. they're bad decisions. They're bad people. And, we end up with train wrecks like what we see.
Yep.
I'm happy I don't live in Texas.
Yeah.
Because they got some messed up stuff there. And I did want to end on this one note, just to be clear. We talked about a couple of YouTube people that did really, really bad, horrible, not good things.
Yes.
And I want to be clear to everybody out there that we're not like that here at TCF. We just abuse Bailey. So I think that's important for everybody.
Fair enough.
All right.
That's what
Let's
I'm
do
here
this
for.
again Thursday, huh?
Sounds good.
Good.
8 p.m. Eastern, 5
I'm
p.m.
for it.
Pacific. We'll be back tomorrow morning. A couple of more days before I leave you all for a couple of weeks, but be back tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., 7 a.m. Pacific. And see y'all soon. Take care. God bless.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye
everyone.
now.
Thank you.
Have a good night.